All right, here we go. So thank you everybody for sharing. I think you all did a wonderful job exploring and figuring out how to use the stakeholder map. As you see, if you've also looked at the articles I shared, stakeholder map isn't traditionally used for community engaged work, but there's some new progress that's happening that's incorporating all of these tools and stuff to community engaged work as well. So some of the articles that you read showed also how stakeholder maps are used in entrepreneurship, businesses, teamwork, like more introspective, inner teamwork, stakeholder mapping, that sort of stuff. So there's a wide range of uses for the stakeholder map. But for the purposes of this class, we are trying to see how we might use these more traditionally entrepreneurship or design thinking tools in community engagement to make more sense of our experience. So I'm going to talk a bit about moving from the empathy stage to the define stage, because now we're clearly covered all of the empathy tools that I had, such as active listening, stakeholder mapping, principles of community engagement, all of those things pertaining to building trust, gaining relationships, understanding experiences of others who experience problems of the world. So now we're going to talk about how to synthesize the feedback you get from experiencing those problems, from talking to the people who experience those problems. How do we synthesize that information? How do we make sense of it? And how do we frame it in a way that gives us a clear problem statement or a question that we want to explore and solve? Here it says, empathy stage is all about engagement, building trust, gaining insights, gathering resources and information, and understanding the experiences of others and our experiences of those moments for yourselves to get into the headspace of your community partner, your user, your customer. And then the define stage, the second stage of design thinking, follows those experiences, and it's all about putting perspective on all of that insight and narrowing down the problem statement. This is a neat example that's, there's an article that I really love, and this is a neat example from there. This is what making sense of your insights might look like to come to a stage where you start ideating on solutions. That's the third stage. After we have the second stage defined, the third stage is the solutions space now, and that is about brainstorming solutions to the problem at hand. So the first two stages, empathy and define, are still in the problem space, still about experiences of people, and then third stage is about finding solutions to those problems. So in the second step, it's all about putting a frame on the problem so that you have a path to follow to find a solution to a specific scope of an issue. So here, this is a good example. It says, what's the sum of 5 plus 5? It's 10. There's only one answer. There's not really room for creativity or like multitudes of answers. There's only one solution. It's very narrow, very straightforward. And that's not really how productivity or creativity works. And the second one is, what two numbers add up to 10? And that basically has infinite answers if you count negative numbers, fractions, and there's room for growth, creativity, flexibility, and it gives you more options. So this is just an example of how framing a question might change the answer. And that applies to how framing a problem might change the solution you focus on. That's why I've been saying, like, don't worry about the solutions, worry about the problem first. Let's think about how to frame the problems that you want to solve in a way that will lead you to creative solutions. And this is a quote from the videos I made you watch on the 5 stages. I love that guy so much. I memorized this quote pretty much. He says in the Define YouTube video he makes, at the end he says, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at begin to change. Because if they're always looking at a problem from the same perspective, they're never finding a solution for it because it's still a real world problem and it's not going away. But if we change our perspective, understand the problem from different perspectives, and gather that insight, we change the way we look at the problem. Therefore, we can change the problem and find a solution for it. So that's sort of the second stage. I think this is the absolute most important stage, and it's very personal and it's very sort of soft structured. This is basically a culmination of all of the insights you get from interviewing people, researching the problem, experiencing, doing site visits, like Yue mentioned she spoke to so many different partners. She experienced it on a personal level in China. So doing all of those things and those culminating to one statement or one problem that culminate all of your experiences. Sorry. Okay. Here is the tools that I want to talk about for this defined stage. So these are tools that you can use to understand and frame your user experience. So we're in the defined stage. We're talking about framing the insights we're receiving. So I'm going to talk about two tools. There's a bunch more, but I find these two to be the most helpful and most relevant to what we're doing in class. So the first one is called empathy mapping. Empathy map is a collaborative visualization tool to articulate what we know and learn from a particular type of user. So basically, let's say for Susan's example, social justice, this is basically Susan going to talk to someone who experiences social justice, let's say a high school student who lives in a disadvantaged neighborhood, and she makes an empathy map directly from what that person is saying to her. So this is based on real life feedback and experiences of a single person, and it encompasses experiences, feelings, pain points, and gain points of that person around the social justice issue. Versus persona mapping is sort of a way to understand our customers compared to like different from traditional research, just like asking for feedback or just understanding demographics. This is understanding the experience of a person. So both of these tools sort of focus on what a person experiences when they use a product or when they use a service or when they experience a social problem in the world. That's sort of our focus. So the persona map is fictional. This is basically you do a bunch of interviews, you do a lot of research, and then you make a fictional character that represents a larger stakeholder. So let's say Susan was talking to a specific person, a specific high schooler doing an empathy map. Now the persona map would be if Susan spoke to multiple people and decided to make a fictional high schooler who experiences social justice issues. So these are two sort of different user experience maps. I'm going to give an example, like an easier example here from something I did last year as a library project. We were trying to answer the question, how might we get professors to incorporate more design thinking tools into their curriculums? And we had to interview a bunch of different professors, research professors, instructor-only professors, tenure track, non-tenure track, like 70-year-old, 30-year-old. What are the differences in how much they put importance into like engagement in the classroom, basically. So empathy map, this is based on a real person. Ross, 37, he's a research professor. He's a father of a 5-year-old. These are the insights, like very short example. He can't do a lot of curriculum planning, so he doesn't really have time to add these stuff because he does a lot of research. He's a dad. He has like 5 employees to train in his lab. So this is a real person, real things I got from him. Versus a persona map, you usually give them a nickname. So this is Alan, the eager researcher. So you understand that this persona represents the research professors or the younger research professors, and his demographics are more rounded up. He's in his 30s, he's a STEM professor. His main focus is research, teaching is secondary for him. So this is sort of fictional sort of persona to make sense and map out what kind of stakeholders are experiencing this problem. So this persona is for a research professor, but I could have had a persona for like an older age social sciences professor who's on the tenure track, let's say. So these are two different tools that you can use. So I'm going to talk about empathy map first, then I'm going to talk a little bit about persona map. So an empathy map is a collaborative visualization tool used to articulate what we know about a particular type of user. It externalizes knowledge about users in order to create a shared understanding of needs and help us in decision making, help us figure out what our users are experiencing. So empathy maps should be used throughout any user experience process to understand and prioritize user needs. I'm not going to read this slide. I'm going to move forward. This is what an empathy map looks like. So when you are talking to a person, you write down what do they see when they experience this problem, or what do they see when they use a product? So this is like two-pronged again, entrepreneurship, community engagement. What do they say or do when they're experiencing this problem? What do they hear? What do they think and feel? And when you have these insights directly from the person you're talking to, you write down, you look at them, you analyze them, and then you write down what are some pain points, what are some things that have a negative effect on this person around this issue, and then what are some gain points, what are some areas that can be improved upon, what are some things that bring this person joy. Even if it's like a social justice thing, a gain point could be like going to a protest and feeling that spirit of like collaboration and camaraderie between the activists. That could be a gain point, versus a pain point could be getting tear gassed. And you would get these insights from whatever it is that they've heard, saw, said, thought, or felt. This is an example. This is a person buying a TV. Like they go into a store, they're buying a TV. They say stuff like they ask a lot of questions to the person working there. What do you think of this one? What size is best? What brand do you like? And they say stuff like, I want something reliable. They sometimes feel overwhelmed. They can feel excited. They might feel inadequate. They might feel unsure of who to talk to. What do? They check the website to look for TVs. They list pros and cons of different TVs. They compare products. And they think stuff like, am I wasting too much time? I want something awesome. Maybe this isn't the best. That one is funny. It says too many acronyms. So this is like everything that a person experiences when they're trying to buy a TV is what they have mapped out here. So the process basically is, first, you define your scope and goals. What user will you map? That's what you pick first. Always start with a one-on-one mapping, as in one user per one empathy map, because this is about an individual. This means if you have multiple people, you should have multiple maps. It says, define your primary purpose for empathy mapping. Is it to have a template to begin your research, which is okay. Like sometimes you might start on an empathy map just to test yourself and your knowledge or your personal experience with a problem and see how that might map out. Or you might map somebody else based on an interview that you're making. So set a clear scope and set a time box. It says this shouldn't take more than 30 minutes if you're doing this by yourself. Here, the second one is collect research. This isn't just about interviewing. There's a lot of ways to get research for an empathy map: user interviews, field studies, diary studies, listening sessions, qualitative surveys. You can talk to many, many people. The third one is filling it in. So you go through each quadrant: thought, felt, saw, heard, and then once you have those, you write down, you do an analysis, you write down pain or gain, like I described, or sometimes it's called need and obstacle. What do these people, what does this person need to overcome the situation? What are the obstacles standing in their way? So you make that analysis and you add that to the empathy map. And you sort of have a foothold on what that specific person or what that stakeholder pool may be experiencing within the situation. And this is a great tool to have something physical to prove a point or to add in a research or to have, so you know that you can use that and reference it back. But these are also just things like interview tips you can keep in mind if you don't want to do an empathy map, but you want these to be things that you pay attention to. But it's always good to map out stuff because it gives you more perspective. And that's what we're talking about: reframe, perspective. So that's empathy map. I'm going to talk real fast about persona mapping because we won't be doing one, but persona mapping is the fictional version of that basically. Here, this is Julia's persona map. Julia is the director of iZone. When we were doing that faculty research, we wanted faculty members to make persona maps of their college years. So Julia made a persona map of when she was 20. This is slightly based on real life, but also fictional since this was like 15 years ago. So she wrote down like favorite class, least favorite class, because we were trying to discover what was interesting and engaging in a classroom. So this is an example of a persona map that she made. But some of the time, you don't have real people you base this on. Most of the time, it's a fake person. So you find a name, a fake name, and a tagline. So here it says, Carla, the young professional, because they're trying to figure out how to best arrange a workspace. That's what the example is here. So you first add a tagline to a person. It says it's important that your persona has a name so you can quickly identify them and keep in mind what stakeholder pool that this persona represents. So second, you add this person's demographics. You can make these up based on the research you've done that you know of the general demographics of your stakeholder pool. So their job, education, age, gender, whatever it is that's relevant to your demographics, their main responsibilities. And the reason why we do this is demographics provide more context around who this person is and helps to paint a better visual of what their life is like. So as you see, like the reason why we did the stakeholder map is you can pick the top priorities you were talking about there and sort of try out one of these tools to see, one, how this tool works, and two, what kind of insights you might get out of doing the map and then analyzing it from a specific individual's point of view. So the third thing on a persona map is needs and goals. What are their pain points? What needs do they have that they're not currently being met? So this is the needs and obstacles thing again. But this is for, again, a fictional person based on the culmination of your research. One other thing I should add is a bonus of the persona map is because you're not using any direct personal information, it sometimes helps for anonymity, for representing a stakeholder pool without just laying it on one person's experience, like the empathy map. All right, so the last things, roles in the community. So you talk about what roles does this persona have in their community and what value do they provide to the others. This is important to understand the ecosystem and to understand the positionality of this stakeholder, of this persona in the community. And then lastly, you write down what matters most. So what matters most to this person? What is the one thing that they would like to have solved? What is the one thing that they would like to spend time working on? When it comes to community engagement, this is really important to understand because you need to know the priorities of a person, the obstacles of a person in their life so that you know how much they can commit to the community engaged project or the initiative that you're starting. All right, I'm going to stop here because we are right on time too. I'll take any questions via Slack if you want to stay behind and ask them here. But basically, until Monday, I would like for you all to try out an empathy map. You can make it to be more like a persona map. That's why I shared both if you want to keep it more fictional. You can make a personal empathy map if you have personally experienced the problem that you chose as your impact focus, or you can make it based on any previous insight you gained if you've interviewed any stakeholders around your impact focus. Additionally, if you think you got time, you can take more time, not make this due Monday, but take your time next week, go interview some people and do a real life empathy map with an actual person experiencing the problem that you picked. I included 4 readings. You don't need to read all of them. I would suggest just browsing. The one in C, it says great step-by-step instructions on how to complete the empathy map. This one you should follow when you do the empathy map because that one is a good guide on how to do it. And then basically just share them with me afterwards. Yes, Madawan.
How are you gonna interview people if you're nowhere near the problem itself?
You can Zoom them.
No, I mean you don't know. I don't have any contacts in the problem that I want to solve. So how do you go about?
That's why I said try to narrow down a very specific either geographic area or demographic, and then try to find out NGOs, people, resources that are surrounding that issue. And when you find that, that's just a matter of reaching out to those people, even if you don't know them. But you would have to get specific with your stakeholder map to figure out who would be a good person to talk to.
Right. So I'm supposed to complete the empathy map by Monday, right?
I'm going to be flexible with this. So if you all need more time to do this, I'm okay with you doing this until like Friday. I think we're going to keep the ideation stage of our class more as an example and not follow the impact focuses you all picked, because then that would be too many ideations going on at once. So if you want to have this due by Monday, that's fine. If you want to have this due by next week, Friday, that's also fine. This is just a thing that I think would be useful for you to complete. Basically, either interview someone to do an empathy map. If you've done it before, if you've done interviews before, you can use that information. Or if you personally experienced the problem, you can use that information as well. But this would be a really good activity for you all to complete. And that's why I sort of gave the range of, if you want to do persona map, that's fine. If you want to do empathy map, that's also fine.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can we do a fictional character, like in persona map? Like, for example, make some investigation in articles, perhaps about typical person that has a certain problem, and then make a fictional character that represents this prototype of a person who has this specific problem. Not necessarily have direct contact with the person, but indirectly, linking certain behaviors and certain problems with a specific persona. Can we do that?
Yes, you can 100% do that. That's sort of a better use of the persona map too, because when you have that fictional person, you will have done qualitative research, like you will have read about it, thought about it, and make your persona map based on that. And if in the future you end up wanting to talk to people about this problem, you will sort of have a persona map ready of like what you've seen in the research. So you can compare what real life feedback is in the, like later down in the road to what you've read, and see if there's any like stereotypes that emerge, or if there's any like factual insights that emerge from the persona map you made based on pure research versus empathy map that you made talking to someone. But I just mean that for down the road. So if you want to make a fictional one, that is 100% okay, yeah. Okay, that's all I have for today. It was a bit fast, and Monday we'll revisit this. I won't ask you to share the empathy maps on Monday. I'll just revisit it as a concept. But if you end up practicing this over the weekend, I'll ask you to share what you thought about it, and we'll have some time to discuss some of the details of it as well. So that's all I have for today. You can stick around if you have questions, but otherwise you're free to go.